everyone, welcome to today's Yin Yoga class in the Aerial Silk. The theme is inner knowledge, so knowing what we need in this moment. This is suitable for pregnancy. Obviously, make sure you get the okay from your doctor before you do any physical exercise. And if you are pregnant, please just back off a little bit. Don't go to your deepest range and listen to your body. And if something doesn't feel right, then you can come out of the pose. So let's begin. Let's start sitting in front of the silk, taking a few deep breaths. Inhaling through the nose, expanding the belly. And if you're heavily pregnant, you might like to expand through the chest instead. And exhale, sighing it out of the mouth, letting it go. Inhale, expand through the belly or the chest or both, and exhale, sighing it out. One more deep breath like this, a nice kriya or cleansing breath. Sighing it out, letting go of the day. And we can use our sigh or our cleansing breath at any time during this Yin Yoga practice. It does feel quite nice to release a little bit of tension. So let's start to warm up in the silk. Bringing the hands behind the silk. The silk is at the shoulder blades. And you can start to bring the soles of the feet onto the mat, the hands behind the head. You can widen the silk if that feels more comfortable for you. And just moving from side to side. Opening up through the chest, the shoulders. And you might even start to move from side to side, moving in the opposite direction and then back to center. So knees in the opposite direction, back to center. So getting some movement through the body, through the hips, using your hands behind the head to support you. And of course you can always bring the silk a little bit higher on the shoulder blades underneath the armpits to help support you as well, so you're not using too much of the abdominals. And then from here we'll come into our reclined butterfly pose. So I'm going to grab my blocks, and you may or may not use a bolster depending on how high your fabric is. So bringing the feet together, the blocks may be under the knees or you may not need them. And starting to lay back on the silk. So this is our first Yin Yoga pose. We'll hold the Yin Yoga pose for between 3 and 4 minutes. Bringing the hands can be by the side, behind the head. You might just take this moment to just play around with what feels good for you. You might feel like it's a little bit too deep. So of course you can bring a bolster behind you just so that you're resting on a bolster instead of opening up too much. So you can obviously use lots of props, or you can just use the hammock. And then from here you can start to close down the eyes, taking a deep breath in through the nose. And exhale, sighing it out of the mouth. Taking a few more breaths. And start to, as you start to slow down the breath, start to sink into your pose. Now, in Yin Yoga we find our edge, that place between discomfort. It can be a little uncomfortable if you're opening up your body, but we should never feel pain. We should be able to breathe into it. So we shouldn't be holding too much tension. We shouldn't have gone too deep where we hold too much tension. And but we should be able to sink into it. Maybe a little bit challenging, not so much if you're pregnant, particularly with the wide knees. So you can really use some blocks for pregnancy. You can even have the blocks on the medium level, or you can have 2 blocks either side. So it's recommended that we just don't go too deep when we're in pregnancy. Just as we have a little instability around the pelvis. Obviously, if we are more experienced in yin yoga, we might be able to play around with a deeper edge. But in pregnancy, we should not be focused on becoming more flexible. So you might even treat your yin yoga practice as a restorative class, not necessarily going to your edge, but just having a nice stretch, opening up the body, and using this time to listen to your body. Listen to what feels good for your body. It's that inner knowing. And this pose obviously targets the inner thighs, the groin area, and a little bit of a heart opener in the chest. Very opening pose, a very vulnerable pose. And metaphysically, we're opening up to the possibilities. So we're also targeting the heart chakra and the sacral chakra. So the heart chakra is located in the chest, and the sacral chakra is located just below the navel. And it's, I guess, when it is unblocked and functioning, our sacral chakra is associated with creativity, emotion, new beginnings, sexuality and sensuality. And then of course our heart chakra, located in the chest, is associated with love, belonging, connectedness with others, and not just others but also ourselves, loving ourselves, being kind to ourselves. So loving ourselves or being kind to ourselves today might mean just backing off from always pushing, always going that little bit too further. A yin yoga practice is a really great chance to allow us to slow down, to be still. And often that is the challenge for many of us. You might notice when we're still, what's going on in the mind. We might be confronted by perhaps what's going on in the mind. So we can use our breath as a distraction. Focusing on our breath, not ignoring the mind chatter, maybe acknowledging it, the mind chatter, but not creating too much drama around our thoughts or emotions. So noticing what's there without too much fuss, without judgments, and then redirecting our attention to the breath. And then from here, just taking a few more breaths. A nice sigh is often just really good when we want to release some tension, release some emotion, energy. 3 more breaths here. And then from here, we can start to reach for the hammock, start to lift our head with the help of the hands, gently bring the knees back to center. We can just pop the blocks to the side. And if you would like to tuck the chin to the chest, you might even move back a little bit, just moving from side to side. And from here, we'll pull ourselves up and we're going to come behind the silk for our frog pose. So this is, along with the last pose, this is another pose that we can do on the mat if we want to go a little bit deeper, but with the hammock, I'm just going to pop this down to my knees, this blanket, so you can fold your mat, maybe bring it long ways, or you might not need it if you're on carpet or something like that. So bring the knees wide and just making sure you've got no kinks in the silk. Coming to our hands and knees, and we can start to bring the chest into the silk and then bring the silk to support the upper body. So it's a nice support for the upper body. Here it feels nice to either just keep the feet where they are, or you can flex the feet, maybe start to draw them outwards and then shift the body back. So just finding a comfortable position with that fabric just allows us to not come too deep, finding your edge here, or even just backing off a little bit if you're pregnant, or a lot, making it more of a restorative. Normally this feels quite strong for me, but with the fabric, it holds me. It allows me to take more of a restorative approach. So you can have a bolster here, hugging the bolster, or you can bring the head to a block. And just taking a few breaths here, allowing yourself to sink into the pose. So you should be feeling it in the inner thighs. If not, you can move the hips back just to go a little bit deeper. That the silk is not pressing too much into the body. If it's a little bit strong, you can, of course, come out and fold it over. So you can fold it over so it's not too bunched up, which is what I will do. Be a little bit more comfortable for me. And then using the folded edge, this part's going to come to my hips. And bring it above the chest, top of the chest, and then below the belly. And that's much more comfortable. So just adjusting where you need to. And then starting to sink into the pose. Using your breath to sink deeper. Always tuning into how your body feels. And listening to the sensations in the body. It's really great once we get a regular yoga practice that we start to learn how the sensations in our body and how our body feels in those times when we do have to listen to our body. Often in many other sports, or like a gym environment, we're encouraged to push past the pain, run past the pain. And in our yin practice, it's the opposite. So we listen to our body. We don't want to get injured in our yin practice, and even though it can feel restorative sometimes, if we do go too deep, we can injure ourselves. But we want to listen to our body. We want to do yoga for as long as possible. So finding that place where you're not in pain, you're safe, you're comfortable. There's a level of discomfort in yin yoga normally, but you can breathe into the practice. Remaining still if that feels good for you. If you do need to come out, please feel free to do that. We only have a little bit longer. I'll just take 3 more breaths. And then from here, we can press into the hands, start to bring the knees a little bit closer. And coming up into a tabletop pose. Take a breath here. Notice how you're feeling in the body. And then you can take a few hip circles. Just taking a few hip circles. Perhaps moving through the shoulders and the neck. And then back the other way. And then from here, we're taking our mermaid pose. This is a really lovely pose, allowing ourselves to lengthen through the lower back. So to come into it, you can come into it from a seated pose. And I'll unfold this so it gives me the length. I'm just going to bring my knees over. Shift the body forward, just grabbing the edge. So this is where you'll notice if the silk is maybe a little bit too high. So you can adjust the silk and bring it a bit lower if you need to. Lifting the hips up, bringing the silk around the sacrum and then sitting back into the silk. So this might be okay, this might feel fine for you. I like to just lengthen my legs in this pose. Just moving from side to side. If you find that you're too compressed, I guess, you can move back a little bit and that's going to lengthen the body out a little bit more. So I'll just move that out of the way. It's going to lengthen the body out a little bit more. Moving from side to side. And then finding some stillness here. Down the eyes. If you feel like you need to move, normally in our yin yoga practice, we resolve to remain still for the duration of the practice. But if you do feel like you need to move, this may be only good for maybe 30 seconds or a minute. But please move when you feel the urge. Closing down the eyes. We won't be here for too much longer. And just moving the feet from side to side. Now coming into our Shavasana pose. So You may hold on to the silk as you bring yourself up. If you're in your second or third trimester, just come out the way you came in, and we can roll over to the side, and then making our way into our seat initially. So from a kneeling pose, bring one foot up, sitting into the fabric. Laying down here, and from here you can just roll over to the side. Rolling over to the side, stretching out the arms and the legs, and just taking a gentle swaying. So you can bend the knees, rolling forward. It's like a wave of movement. And you might even just do the other side, coming over to the other side. Finding that wave. And then just using the arm as a pillow. Knees bent on the side. You can start to rest here. Closing down the eyes. Just taking your Shavasana as long as you need to here. In your little cocoon. And thank you for joining me today for this very beautiful, sweet yin yoga class with the aerial silk.